Evening YouTubers, welcome to Shrigleytube TV. In last week's episode you might remember we did some work on a cylinder head where we modified the chamber to put a support screw in, etc, remachined the wheel spring grooves. Well, that engine is now in a dyno and there's nothing particularly interesting about this engine. It's just a run-of-the-mill race engine, but it does run what we call an old school R23 camshaft. Now there'll be plenty of people watching this video now and say, oh, I remember the R23 cams, they were ace, you know, and they are ultimately a big horsepower cam, but they have so much duration and they have no airspeed at low RPM, so they have no torque and they're really quite difficult to drive. You need these cams in what I'd consider to be like a proper race car, lightweight, close ratio box, etc. Anyway, the point of what I'm saying is, I think they make a really nice noise. In the modern cam profiles that we run nowadays, they've gone a bit clinical and they sound much the same as anything else that's on track. But when I was a kid and I really got interested in Hillmans, the thing that attracted me to them was the sound. My dad used to race in the Cockshoot Cup and it used to clash at Alton Park with some of the meetings for the Mod Sports and Wendy Wolves, etc. And I saw these cars and I heard them and it was the noise, and they all ran these camshafts. So I've been doing a bit of analysing in the channel, and it does seem that you lot all really like watching anything to do with an engine, and you just put up with me waffling. Anyway, that's why I thought we'd start this tonight's episode with a little dyno session, and I'm going to leave the camera in the dyno cell. Hopefully it won't be too loud and make the microphone vibrate or whatever, and you'll get a good bit of sound quality, and it does sound lovely. It's a lovely engine, this. I'm really impressed with it. It's got quite a decent compression ratio, so it all worked quite well, because these big duration cams, you need to have a high static compression so that the dynamic doesn't drop too low and we end up with no burn speed. So later in the show, we've got a few different, the program, we've got a few different things happening. I've done a bit of a review on my Jaguar, and I've got something exciting to share with you about a project that a customer's brought to me and various bits and bobs. So we'll run this now and I'll stop waffling. Right, I hope you enjoyed listening to this poor little engine getting some pain there. I just wanted to say at the end, you saw a lot of smoke in the cell. I've got the exhaust resting on a piece of wood, and the wood was saturated in oil, so the hotter it got, the more the smoke came off it. So it wasn't the engine smoking. But what I wanted to say was, it may seem like I'm being really cruel to the engine, you know, wide open throttle, all the rest of it. These engines are designed and they're really happy to do what we just did with it. It doesn't bother them in the slightest. The only thing that bothers these engines is temperature, oil and water, you know, and obviously clean air, etc. They are really strong units, so the RPM does not bother them in the slightest. They'll do it to 8.5 safely all day. So the one thing I wanted to say to you was, the numbers, it's not a bad air day, it's 1020 millibar air day, so it's quite a good air day, but the numbers that's just done there for the spec of the engine, and I think about how much effort I go to get just a little bit more, and I mean like 3-4 foot-pound more. It just goes to show there was a lot of clever people around back in the day. This is just an old school 998. It hasn't got any funny angle heads on it, hasn't got shaved inlet, it hasn't got all the things that we do to try and make them do more power. It's just a flat top Epilite piston with an R23 cam, a pair of forces, Jan Speed exhaust manifold, none of the fancy Will Parry stuff, and yeah, it's done really well. I'm pretty staggered, to be honest. It's a while since I've had an old school engine on like this. The last time I was impressed like this was when I ran the Bevan engine for Jonathan, and I tried to talk him into putting a modern cam profile on it and doing this with the head and doing that with the head. He said, Andy, I just want it as it ran in my grandfather's car, and we did it, and that was a similar situation. It was a bit fluffy off cam, but once it got going, the torque was there. It was good. So yeah, we'll have to get back to the drawing board and keep trying different things, because we're not making any sizable difference from what was done 30 years ago. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. We gather here today to celebrate the life of the high compression Hillman imp race engine. Unfortunately, he passed away at Castle Coombe race circuit, where his ashes were instantly spread over the front of a Ford Anglia. So we want to celebrate his life as a race engine and his success at Brands Hatch. And right, I'll stop being stupid now. I was just messing about there. This is the engine that James blew up at Castle Coombe. We've already done a bit of a video on it in the Brands Hatch preparation week, but I felt that we just rushed through it and not really looked at what had happened and gone on about it. So I've just been thinking to myself, what could have caused the side of the engine to pop off like that, you know? So here's what happened. It was going around really fast. This little rod said, well, actually it wasn't this rod. The rod that came out is stuck in the grill of the Anglia. But this is another rod that I'm just using as an example. So the cap burst. There's that one part of a cap we found. And here is the bearing shell, which has no heat in it. It's just been peeled off. And here is the ARP 625 plus lovely big end bolt, which obviously when the cap split there, what happened was the cap burst and it instantly snapped the bolts. So what happened was, obviously this is going around this way, and I was thinking, so if you can imagine, it's just burst the cap, and then as he's come round, he's hit him there, boom, and that's what's blown the side out. And if we look on the inside of here, this goes like this. So if we look, you can see where the rod has caught the liner in there. It's even got the jaw marks from the cap, and it's basically blown the side of the engine out. The crank's obviously got a mark where it impacted it, but it's all so fast, you know, an explosion. So that's why we're putting steel rods and everything now, because even though the standard rod is a very, very good rod, you know, everything's got a limit. So we'll the rest of it is absolutely in good nick. You know, it's a real shame that it blew up, but that is life is such. There's a couple of the pistons and rods that didn't die. So yeah, I thought we'd just do a bit of a conclusion on that, a bit of fun, and we'll move on now to, I think we're going to do a crank polish. Right, okay, got a crankshaft to polish, and I thought we'd just go through a few simple things first together, mainly safety, just because the crankshaft in a lathe is a particularly dangerous piece of kit, and I'd hate for anyone to watch one of my videos, attempt to do it, and then get themselves caught up. Before I start all that, I've just set the speed on the lathe to 800 RPM, and I mean, engines just fascinate me. You watch this thing going round at 800 RPM, that's like a low idle speed. Can you imagine what it's like at like 8,500 RPM? How it works, I have no idea, but This is 800 RPM. That's going some, that, isn't it? Anyway, moving on, what we'll talk about is polishing the crank. So, first thing to do, make sure we have the lowest speed possible, which I've selected 40 RPM. And then just familiarise yourself with the lathe. So, I know that I've got a stop down here, which is a brake as well. So, I always just remind myself, make sure nothing's caught underneath it, so that if I do ever find myself in a situation where I need to stop the machine quickly, I can do, because the torque this thing's got, it won't stop until you're just a load of sausage meat going around with it, you know. Anyway, we'll say this is a crank polishing tape. I'll put it around the journal. Very, very important if you're buying or using very fine grit belt sanding, it ends up in a complete loop. And you don't worry putting your fingers in the loop, because if it snags, you've only got a second to get your fingers out of it. So we hold the tape, just pinch it like that. So when it's going round, you can do your thing and polish it. But if anything happens, like it catches a web like this, not like that, like this. But anyway, it's really easy to catch a web. There you go. I mean, you can just let go. So that's why we do it like that. And the other thing that's really important when we're polishing a crank is, obviously we can't see, we just see the surface as it looks to us. It looks smooth and ground and great, but we always polish the crank in the direction of rotation that it's going in the engine, because if we had a microscope now and we looked at these surfaces, they'd be full of undulations and high bits and rough bits, obviously at a microscopic level. So by running the tape over it in the direction of rotation, we layer all these edges over so that it doesn't attack the bearing. So always make sure your crank's going in the direction of rotation it is in the engine. We're not going to pinch these other than just like that. So if it does have a go, we can just pull our hands out. Aim on the slowest speed possible. I like to do this and move him from side to side. In the tape narrower than the journal, so you can move across and do a bit of this and do a bit of that. Do the same on the big end. This tape is worn out, which is oddly how I like it. I'm not looking to take any size off this. I'd have tongs on it if I was doing that. I'm just literally polishing any high spots off and making sure that the bearing can move across the surface nicely. Right, well, look at that. Lift the safety cover up, because then the machine is dead. Then no matter what happens, I can't make it work. I'll also put it into neutral, so there's no way I can get tangled up in it. So a quick look at them journals. They look lovely. We'll have a quick measure up while we're here. So this is 1 5/8, less 10 thou. So that's 1 615, perfect. Measure them in a couple of places. Obviously, because the com rod always pushes on one side of the journal, what we're looking for is ovality. But this is a fresh ground crank, so I'm not expecting to see any. I'm just going through the motions for the sake of the camera. And then the main journal diameter is 1 7/8, which is 1 875. Oh, and this one's at 10, so this one is 1 865, and it's just a couple of tenths above. So that's perfect. We don't need to check them for ovality because they don't wear oval for some reason. I think it's, well, actually that's not true strictly. They do wear, but you always see it because you've got an oil channel in the middle of the main bearing, so you can always see the wear, you know. These are obviously fresh. Right, that just concludes my little chat about crankshaft polishing. Thanks for watching. Hi and welcome back to Shrigleytube TV. This is something very different. I've had a day off work basically because we had a childcare issue with the youngest, so thought we'll make the most of it, and we're going to do a video about my Jaguar which I'm selling, and I'm only going to rattle on about it for 5 minutes, mainly the engineering side. You got your sausage roll, Dougie, yeah? Great. Yeah, good lad. You keep chomping through that while Daddy rattles on for 5 minutes. So we're going to talk about this XJ40. Now, if you're into your cars, you'll know what a Jaguar XJ40 is. I'll take some pictures of the outside of it, but this one's a bit different. It's a manual version. It's only a 3.2, and it's a really well engineered car. And I think part of that is because obviously Jag made the series 1, 2 and 3 for like 30 years or whatever, and then they brought out the XJ40, so they got all the bumps ironed out. A bit like I love Mark 7 Escort vans, because all the Mark 5, 6 and 7 Escorts drive mint, because all the bumps have been ironed out for all the Mark 1, 2 and 3 they made and got it all wrong. So it's a really well engineered car, and I was going to say the engine is an absolute peach. Now this is what they call it, the AJ16 engine, which is obviously a 4 valve per, please don't do that, Dougie, 4 valve. Dougie, these are my black leather seats, mate. Be nice to the Jaguar, yeah? Yeah? Can you do an impression of an imp engine on a dyno, Dougie? What noise does it make? Yeah, good lad. So the AJ16 engine followed on from the XK engine, and it's obviously a 4 valve per cylinder engine, really efficient, and it's an aluminium block as well, so it doesn't weigh that much. So this car handles amazingly for a big lump, you know. It's and the best thing about it is, I don't know how they've managed to insulate the subframe from the body, but there is no road noise, or when you go over a bump, the quality is amazing. You know, I've had modern cars, I don't really like them, but I've been in a few of them and it's just rubbish. This thing drives beautifully, and you can throw it around a bit as well. It handles, you know. Purists would probably say it should have an auto box on it, but I like the manual because it's a proper, you know where you are with it. Unfortunately, one thing this has got is it's got too many silencers on the exhaust. So that lovely engine, I'll try and give it a bootful. Although you can just about hear it, it doesn't really make any noise at all. So going back to the running gear, this AJ16 timing chain driven straight 6 engine, absolute peach of a donkey. I reckon it would tune up really well, you know, a bit of compression and some air and some cams in it, a bit of area, a nice exhaust system. I think you could do, I mean, I've heard they rev no problem to sort of 7.5. I reckon you could do 90 horsepower per litre, which would be into the sort of 270 horsepower, you know, with throttle bodies on. But the Jag isn't really the sort of car you do that thing to, it's more of a cruiser. So I'm not going to go on for ages. I'll take some videos of the outside and then we'll leave it at that, because I didn't want to go on too much. It's not really what the channel's about, but it's a bit of a thing for me, this, because I am selling it and it's going to be gone on eBay by Saturday morning, so it'll be goodbye from Andy, and I'll always be able to look at this video and reference back to it to when I owned the Jaguar. Continuing on for 1 minute on the XJ40, one thing I would like to say is the build quality of the interior is really up there. You know, if you're getting a modern car, or any car really, and you really crunch on the steering wheel and put a lot of stress into it, you normally get like a creaking and a groaning as the plastic rubs around the column on the dashboard and all. This thing is absolutely solid. There is no play at all. I wouldn't even be surprised to find needle rollers on the steering column shaft to the tube, because there's just no play in it. It's awesome. A lot of cars use like a nylon bush and stuff which just wear out. This is 150k, so if it was on nylon, there's no way it'd be like that now. It's like brand new. Another thing which you might think I'm a little bit odd, what I really like is a car with pedals that are correct. The pedals in this car, if you imagine how a brake pedal and a clutch pedal works, they're hung down from a pivot pin at the top, so there's a big arm on them as they swing. So this bush at the top, very critical to make it feel correct. And these pedals at 150,000 miles, I put my foot on them with a bit of pressure and try and waggle them. There is no side to side movement whatsoever. The clutch pedal, the brake pedal, they are smooth as silk. And it's little things like that that matter to someone weird like me, but yeah, I can see where they got so much of this car right. It's a shame that it started dissolving after a short while in the salty atmosphere. But anyway, or salty road should I say. I won't go too far with it. We'll do a bit on the engine and dashboard, and then that'll be it. I'll button it and we'll get back to engineering. Just another 30 seconds on the car review. I wanted to say, well done Jag, what an absolutely fantastically clear binnacle you've put in this car. You've got really important for me, voltage. Love a voltage gauge, tells you exactly where you are. If you've got a problem with your charging system, you know about it and you've got time to do something. Oil pressure as well, etc. Lovely gold badge in the middle. Just a nice, pleasant place to be. Continuing on with the XJ40 review, just having a quick walk around. These wheels are from my V12 one, which is called an XJ81, I believe, but it's a pretty little car. It's not rusted, this one, which is quite rare for these cars. I'll put the bonnet and fire it up, and you can see how sweet this 6-pot lump is. So it's all aluminium block, obviously alley head, 6 cylinders, dead simple layout. Even got a mechanical fan on it with a viscous, which is great. Loads of space to work on it around there. Even got a dizzy. It has got a crank sensor though, and it does use I think it's Bosch Motronic, so it's got its own advanced curve in the brain, and obviously it's dead efficient having all this fuel injection. But if you can imagine what this would be like with, you know, this is a 16 valve penthouse chamber, quite a narrow angle looking at how close the cams are. I'd say this head would flow really well. You had some nice 6 into 3 into, well, however it works on a proper tubular manifold for a straight 6. I don't know how you'd pair them. Well, that should be quite easy, wouldn't it? Because you've always got 2 at the top, 2 halfway down, and 2 at the bottom, so you could pair it quite easily. And some throttle bodies on it, and some cams with some area. But it is a Jag, so obviously, unless you're going racing in it, you don't really want to be doing all that. But I'll fire it up. Sweet as I'll fire her up. Sweet as a nut, and it's quite lively as well. Doesn't really make a noise, the exhaust is too quiet, but you get the gist. Right, YouTubers, for our final part of our show tonight, or programme, I'm going to talk about something that I'm very, very excited about. I hope you are too. You'll see in front of me there's 3 blocks here, and this one you'll see is just a conventional 3-bearing imp block. This one is a very, very special engine. This one is one of 10 engines made in 1965 or around that period for the Roots rally cars by the Roots competition department. And the eagle-eyed ones amongst you will have spotted that the block has been cast with 2 extra bearings in. So this is actually a 5-bearing crank. Now, this block's extremely rare. I only know of about 3 or 4 of these in existence. And this one is my own personal one, which I sourced many, many moons ago. Probably about 20 years ago, thinking about it. And it's never done anything. I've put dry liners in it, and I do intend to use it at some point. Now, because of the homologation job, it was always a bit of a grey area, but lucky for me, a pair of clever chaps have come up with this block, which is their new engine based on this one, and it's all homologated and passed off as being aesthetically correct and size wise, etc. So this is a brand new, out of, you know, new aluminium block, and it's 5 bearings. Now, I don't agree with everything the way they've gone about doing it, but it's here, and it's here for me to play with and modify and make how I want. So we're going to turn this into a very high revving imp engine. I'd like it to see 10,000 RPM, because like we talked about earlier in the video with the 998 that was on the dyno, you know, we haven't done anything to really develop them massively more than what they did back in the day, which tells me that there's something we're missing out on. Now, there is another part to this story, and I've just got to clear it with the chap that's in charge of the project before I start putting it on YouTube. But we've got a very special cylinder head to go on it as well, and I'll do a little talk on that in the next week's video. So this block with a 5-bearing steel crank in it, my job now is we're going to work out a block height and a rod ratio to get it in the target rod ratio where I want it. Then we get the rods made for it. Pistons have been made already. Obviously we've got this posh head to go on it as well, which is also a Roots competition spec head from back in the day, so it's all passed off homologation wise. It's accepted as being something that existed back in the day, so that's all good. So I'll talk about that next week, but for now I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight as to what I've been up to and where I'm going with the job. Obviously the majority of my work will always remain as a free bearing engine, because this ends up very expensive, but if it allows us to use them extra RPM and we can make it all work and still do power up there, then we could get into the 130, 135 horsepower mark, which is where we want to be really, if you want to compete in sort of, you know, bigger engine up to 1400cc classes in modern day racing car classes. So yeah, that's the plan anyway. So we'll keep you posted, and we'll do a bit on the head next week, and maybe I'll do a bit more on the block if I get the rod length sorted out and a bit of a dry build on it. Okay, cheers for now.